Do you sell into Europe and Northern Ireland? And are you based outside of Europe and Northern Ireland? If so, I hope that you're already aware about the GPSR, the General Product Safety Regulations. I was asked to give some feedback on them this week. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. But if you know me, I do not like to go and just watch other people's videos and their thoughts and processes on things. I like to go to the actual documentation and have a look. Now, overall, it's not looking that great for small businesses right now. We'll get to why. But actually, there's also a few things that give me potential, a little bit of maybe a glimmer of a light at the end of the tunnel. I don't want to kind of get hopes too high in any way, but usually in my experience, I'm not a lawyer. I have to say that there. I'm not a lawyer, but I've looked at lots of regulations over the years that impact on small business owners. And usually they seem to come in and they're very, very harsh. They're very black and white and they look very scary. And then they come in and there's like this transition period where they iron out a few little niggles and they work things out, and a few grey areas come in. And there's a little couple of bits in the regulations I'm going to point out to you that actually, I'm keeping my fingers crossed here, give me a little bit of cause for hope, not because they actually say that something is going to happen, but because they're referred to these areas in the regulations. It makes me know that they have an awareness about some of the issues. I'll carry on and tell you more, but let's get started first and look at the bare facts about what we actually know. So this is let me just sort my screen out so it's there in front of me. So this is the summary of the regulations. Really, I just thought this was an easier place to start on the actual regulations because it just tells us the facts that it's about a high level of consumer protection and supposedly a level playing field for businesses. I'd say it's not a level playing field unless all businesses have the same finances behind to put everything into place. But let's not quibble or get stuck on that point for now. Let's get to the facts. So the facts are, what products does this impact? Well, as it states here, it applies to new, used, repairs or reconditioned products, anything that's available for distribution, consumption or use in the EU, whether for free or for payment. So it pretty much applies to majority of the things that you are going to be selling and serving with, I suspect. There is a list here of things it does not apply to, including medicinal products for human or veterinary use, food and feed, living plants and animals, genetically modified organisms and microorganisms in contained use, animal-derived and byproducts, plant protection products, transport equipment operated by a service provider, aircraft whose design, production, maintenance and operation pose a low safety risk, antiques, and products which are clearly marked to be repaired or reconditioned prior to use. So if something has been sent to Europe to be repaired or reconditioned, it's okay. Now, one of the sections that gives me a little bit of glimmer is when we look at the antiques section. So I'll be talking about that again a little bit more. But really, that's it. It pretty much covers all products. So if it covers all products, what does that actually mean? Well, it means that there's now a bigger responsibility to make sure that you're only putting products on the market that are safe. Now, I know you would have been doing that anyway, but basically it's all being tied up with red tape now. They're going to take into account the characteristics of product design, technical features, composition, packaging and instructions, the effect on other products, presentation, labeling, warnings, safety instructions and information, categories of consumers using the product. So if it's a child, obviously that's going to make a bigger difference. The appearance of the product, in particular food imitating or child appealing aspects. We'll come to that again later. And it just is putting an awful lot more responsibility. And I kind of agree with the responsibility. I don't necessarily agree with the impact it's having on small businesses, but we should only be putting safe products out there. So on that point of view, it's not really a bad thing. Where it becomes awkward and a bad thing is this: the requirement to have a responsible economic operator in the EU. So basically, the EU want you to have a representative who is going to have all your documentation, know everything about you, and know what's happening, so that if they need to talk to somebody, they go to your EU representative, that your customers could go to your EU representative. And this is where the problem lies. There's a cost associated with this. There's lots of businesses who are now offering this service. It's actually quite a responsibility. So if you are going to look to doing this and you're looking to take on someone who can act as your responsible economic operator in the EU, you really want to make sure that they are up to the job, because they are going to be handling a lot of your data. They are going to be that middle person between you and the authorities. It says here, entrusted with tasks relating to the safety of the product. So as much as you're going to want to do this and keep it, if you're looking for it, as low cost as possible, you also need to make sure that actually the person is going to do a good job, business. They keep talking about this thing called the Safety Business Gateway, and basically they've got a website that set up. The European Commission is they who have got this Safety Business Gateway, and this is where to report dangerous products to member states. So this would probably be done by your representative, and they would be that person in between. So you are and would be using them for a service in the case that your products are dangerous. I'm sure they're not, but we have to go through everything because these are the regulations. We've got here all the obligations and everything else. I'm skipping through this because you can read this yourself. I'm going to pop the links and make sure you can access them. So that's pretty much the summary as we're going through it. It obviously applies from the 13th of December 2024. It's a big impact. It's going to be a big change. But really what I want to do as well is I want to show you why I kind of have a few little glimmers for hope. At the moment, as it stands, unless you have an EU representative and you've got everything set up with them, so they've got all the relevant documentation, that you've signed any certificates that they need signing, that they've got your business details, that they're handling all of that legal stuff for you, you have to stop if you haven't got that in place. So this is from the Official Journal of the European Union. This is the regulations. There are a few points in here which I think potentially, and this is a potentially, I cannot promise or guarantee anything because I do not know, but there are a couple of little things that give me, as I said, that little bit of hope, that little bit of oh, that's actually included in this document. So they are aware of it, they know of it. Let me point you them out. So I'm going to jump to number 18. This is like a 50 older page document. I have scanned through this and found a couple of things that I thought were worth pointing out. Again, the link will be below. You can go through this at your own leisure if you wish. You need legal advice on all of this. This is not legal advice. I am not a lawyer. I have to emphasize this fact. So this is the section which kind of I got a little bit interested in. So this is about antiques. You're probably not selling antiques, so you're probably thinking, why are we looking at this? And I just want to show you why it caught my eye. So antiques, and it says, such as works of arts or collector's item, are specific categories of products which cannot be expected to meet the safety requirements laid down by this regulation. Well, if this didn't have the word antiques at the beginning, that would be very, very interesting, wouldn't it? I think it would be. I think it would open up a lot of artwork, a lot of art collections, a lot of creative avenues. At the moment, this is only relating to antiques, but the fact that they are aware of the fact that works of art are different to many other products, I think it gives a little bit of a glimmer of hope. I'm just going to talk through the rest and give you another bit of information about it as well. So, however, in order to prevent other products, let me highlight, from being mistakenly considered as belonging to these categories, it's necessary to take into account that works of art are products created solely for artistic purposes. They're collector's items of sufficient rarity and historical or scientific interest to justify their collection and preservation. And that antiques, if they are not already works of art or collector's items, or both, are of an extraordinary age. When assessing whether a product is an antique, such as a work of art or collector's item, and they refer to Annex 9, could be taken into account. So I went to Annex 9. Let me just make that a little bit bigger. Now, again, I am just using this as a, oh, they're aware of this. They know this. At the moment, they're only applying it to antiques. But what if they realise that they're missing out on new art coming through the door with new elements of this? And maybe this is the smallest glimmer of light at the end of a very long tunnel, but just maybe this is something they could reconsider with this particular area. So I wanted to look and see, what do they class of works of art, collector's items, and antiques? So pictures, collages, and similarly decorative plaques, paintings, and drawings executed entirely by hand by the artist, other than plans and drawings for architectural, engineering, industrial, commercial, topographical, or similar purposes. Handcrafted manufactured articles, theatrical scenery, studio backcloths, or the like of painted canvas. But this bit here, by hand of the artist, potentially, maybe something about artwork in the future. We also have original engravings, prints, and lithographs being impressions produced in limited numbers. This is a really important phrase here, limited numbers, directly in black and white or in colour of one of several plates. Again, by hand by the artist, irrespective of the process or material employed, but not including any mechanical or photomechanical process. We also have original sculptures and statuary in any material, provided that they are executed entirely by the artist. Sculpture casts, the production of which is limited to 8 copies and supervised by the artist by a successor's in title or an exceptional basis. There's a lot of detail in here that I really don't want to dig into because it's not completely relevant. I just really wanted to point out that they take artists into account. At the moment, it's only applicable to antiques, but maybe I'm taking too big of a leap of faith here. Maybe I'm just kind of getting a little bit optimistic and making 2 and 2 make 57. But actually, what if they could bring this to equate for current artists rather than just antiques? So we've got tapestries in there. We've got individual pieces of ceramics executed entirely by the artist and signed by him. Enamels on copper, entirely executed by hand. You'll notice that everything's by hand here and by the artist. Limited to 8 numbered copies. I don't know why the number 8, but apparently number 8. Then the signature of the artist or the studio. Photographs taken by the artist. And again, there's collector's items there as well. But you can see that I'm just going, oh, they do put artists and artists' work and work of art into its own category. You never know. Maybe they will realise that it doesn't just apply to antiques. I say I could be going a leap too far there, but my little brain just goes, oh, wouldn't that be great if? So my next one that I want to point out before you think I'm kind of just living in cloud cuckoo land, because things like this have changed and we have seen the impact. So, but they need to realize what's happening and that actually it means that this is impacted before they'll change it. Fingers crossed. So number 41 is my next one. So this also, remember, all of these compound together in my mind. So in order for economic operators, that's the business, the manufacturer, the importer, whoever it is that's selling the item. Oops. Are small, medium enterprises, including micro enterprises, to be able to cope with the new obligations imposed by this regulation. So they know that it's going to create issues. The Commission should provide practical guidelines and tailored guidance. For example, a direct channel to connect to experts in the event of questions, taking into account the need to simplify and limit their administrative burdens. Oh my word, can you imagine? So just to help you follow my train of thought here, artists, anything made by hand in that last section, they appreciate is difficult to bring in line with the regulations. At the moment, it's only for antiques. But here they're also addressing the fact that small, medium and micro enterprises are going to struggle with these new obligations. They need to be simplified and it needs to limit their administrative burdens. And at the moment, I haven't been able to find anywhere they've set up this direct channel, but that doesn't mean it won't come. It doesn't mean that it won't happen. But the fact that it's just here gives me another chink of light at the end of the tunnel. Where are we? 104 is my next one. A lot of these are about the detail about how it's going to work. I say I will put the link if you want to go through it yourself. I've tried just to pick out the ones where I go, that really is something we need to be aware of. I'm not saying I've picked them all up. There may be others. If you see others or you know of others, drop them in a comment and let me know. Now, earlier in the summary, there was a point where it was talking about things that look like food that aren't food, and that's this one. Now, this one is not a light at the end of the tunnel. This is a distinct line in the sand. So this is consumer products, which, although not food stuff, resemble food stuff and are likely to be confused with food stuff in such a way that consumers, especially children, may put them in their mouths or ingest them, and which might cause, for example, suffocation, poisoning, perforation or obstruction of the digestive tract, and give rise to controversial interpretation. So if you make anything, I don't know, for example, soaps that look like cupcakes or other types of food, or, well, anything really that looks like food that could get mistaken, or someone could just go, and even pretend to put it in their mouth to eat it, this is going to be classed as dangerous. It is, I'll let you read the whole thing yourself, but here it does say da 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 da. So anything that can be confused with food stuff due to form, odor, color, appearance, packaging, labeling, volume, size, or other characteristics should be considered as dangerous. So the reason I wanted to point this out is if you are someone who sells products that could fall into this category and you're actually thinking of maybe getting yourself a representative in EU, I don't know if I would bother, because I don't think you'll, even with that, I don't think you're going to get past being able to prove that it's safe. So that one I thought was really important. And then, oh, it's 105. I'm scrolling by too fast. This one, for anyone who sells on marketplace sites, this little one is relevant here. So in order to allow economic operators and providers of online marketplaces sufficient time to adapt to the requirements of this regulation, including information requirements, it is necessary to provide for a sufficient transitional period after the date of entry into force of this regulation, which I believe means the 13th of December 2024 as the date of entry, during which products covered by directive are in conformity and with the directive may be still placed on the market. What this says to me is that the business owners who sell through the marketplaces, they have a responsibility to do everything they can to comply with the regulations. But if you're selling through a marketplace that hasn't done everything in time to apply, and they're overlapping with this transition period, that actually there's potentially, again, not legal advice, but potentially, as long as you've done everything you can, whether that's making sure, so Etsy at the moment, let's be a bit more specific on this. Etsy at the moment classify Northern Ireland in with the UK for sales. So when you turn off Europe, you don't turn off Northern Ireland. Obviously, Northern Ireland is in Europe. So the responsibility is on the business owner to make sure that they're not selling when they shouldn't be into Europe, because you haven't got everything in place to meet the regulations. But if Etsy haven't given you that tool, then as long as you do everything that you can and you document everything you can, you should be okay. No, that's a should. That's not a will be okay. It's a should be okay. Usually, again, not legal advice, but usually in my experience of regulations they come in and they come in quite hard for big businesses, but they are quite understanding that some of these regulations are hard to meet. And we saw in, was it number 41, or I think it was number 41. Where are we? Let me scroll. Takes longer to scroll backwards than it does forward. There we go. We know that they are aware of the burden on small, medium and micro enterprises. So as long as you are doing absolutely everything you can, you're documenting what you've done. If you are limited by a platform that you're using, the fact that they are giving this transition period as well for marketplaces, you should in theory be okay. No promises, get your own legal advice. This is just my experience of where it's been so far. Is there anything else I wanted to cover? I think that's pretty much it. I mean, it's a sad day. it's a sad day that through various things that are largely not at any fault of individual business owners, that we're going to end up in a position where we potentially cannot sell into Europe and Northern Ireland, when they are in the UK so close to us. But we as business owners need to follow the regulations that are put in place. My couple of glimmers of light that I see within those regulations, I hope, sincerely hope, that as these are put into practice, that little bit of a grey area may expand and we may find ways around this. I don't mean around it to not comply to the regulations. Everything has to comply to the regulations, but there might be other avenues which comply but aren't necessarily quite so hard or what's the word I'm looking for? Too expensive, out of your pocket to actually put into place when you're such a small business. So yeah, that's kind of my roundup. Not great news, probably not the news that you really wanted, but I find it interesting that there's just those couple of points in those regulations which, to me, just put a little chink in the curtain that maybe there's a little bit of a glimmer of hope in there somewhere. Keep your fingers crossed. If you're aware of anything, if you've got any thoughts, any feedback, drop me a comment below. There's so much information in these documents that I know that I will have missed things that you can kind of point out to me and say. I'd love to hear about them. I'd love to get stuck in and hear your thoughts and your interpretation of everything as well. So sadly, I think it's goodbye to Europe and Northern Ireland for many, many sellers across the world on the 13th of December. But let's not quite give up all hope. You never know what will change. Bye for now.